right, let's learn about kitchen safety. So you guys are going to be filling out a guided notes sheet with this to help you keep your thoughts organized and reference it later. And at the very top, it says, why should we care about kitchen safety? Two main reasons. The first one, obviously, is to keep ourselves safe and keep others safe in the kitchen. We're going to be using knives and stoves and ovens, and we want to make sure that everybody stays safe. Secondly, because you need to pass a kitchen safety test in order to cook, and all the information that you need to pass the test is in these slides and in these notes. Okay, so first thing to talk about is personal prep. So the things that we need to do in our classroom to get ready to cook. You guys are taking notes on this right here where it says personal prep for cooking. You do not have to write down every single word, but you need to be able to read it later and remember what you mean. Okay, so these are the things that we're going to require you every time we cook together in class. Number one is removing jewelry that can touch food. You do not have to take off every single piece of jewelry every time, but if we're doing a lab where we're getting our hands into things, or we would want to take rings off, and we would want to take off dangly bracelets to keep our jewelry safe and also to keep it clean and not touch the food. Next thing is our sleeves need to be rolled up. If your sleeves are longer than your elbows, you need to either push them up or roll them up above your elbows when you're cooking. Next is you need to wear protective clothing like an apron. So in all of our classes, we've got plenty of aprons for you to borrow. So you'll need to wear that to keep your clothes clean and also to keep your clothes from like falling into food or touching food. If your hair is long enough to be tied back, it needs to be tied back in a ponytail. If that's not something that you're used to doing, that maybe you want to practice ahead of time. In my classroom, I'll give out rubber bands for free. And if you want to use one of my hair ties, you can buy it in the PA store. One of the most important things that we do in order to get ready to cook is we need to wash our hands. We'll talk more about that later, but washing your hands is the number one way to prevent giving people food poisoning. Last two items for personal prep. Shoes, you need to wear safe shoes to cook. So your shoes need to be closed-toed. That means your toes need to be covered. You may not wear sandals or slides or slippers when you cook. You have to wear something that covers your toes, like sneakers or boots. Crocs are okay as well. They're not my favorite because they're not the safest, but that's okay. If you come to school or if you come to my classroom on a lab day and you are not wearing safe shoes, you may not cook. So I will try to give you reminders ahead of time to make sure that you have the right shoes on. And then last thing for personal prep is you must take off your backpack. Your phone and headphones need to be put away. And if you're wearing a coat, you need to be ready to take off your coat. If you are a person who loves wearing your coat, you need to make sure that you're wearing something underneath your coat that you're like comfortable wearing, because you cannot wear a coat to cook. Okay. Next thing, I already said it once on the last slide, but the most effective way to prevent foodborne illness or food poisoning is by washing your hands correctly. Okay, so we want to make sure that germs, especially our bathroom germs, stay out of our food when we're cooking. You want to make sure you wash your hands really well. You also want to make sure that your group members also wash their hands, because nobody wants any bathroom germs, any booty cooties in your food. Okay, so we will do a mini lesson about hand washing, but the thing that you need to know in general and for the test is the lathering part, the washing step where you're rubbing the soap into your hands, should last for 20 seconds, which is a long time. It is longer than you probably washed your hands for. Okay, so 20 seconds using soap and warm water. And then you should use a paper towel to dry your hands. We have cloth towels in the classroom to wipe down counters and dry plates, but you'll want to use a paper towel to dry your hands because it's the cleanest. So you use it and then throw it away. All right. Oh, here's a delightful video about hand washing that I will never not show because I love it. Is it going to work? Yes.
We love soap so much we scrub for fun. We are Wash Your Hansington. Yes, we are Wash Your Hansington.
Visit Wash Your Hansington, where people wash their hands, cover their cough, and get the flu vaccine.
This is the state of the evergreen and impeccable hygiene. We love it when our hands are clean.
Wash Your Hansingtonians are always friendly and germ-free. They love to give high fibers, not high fevers.
We cover our coughs, every single one. We are Wash Your Hansington. Yes, we are Wash Your Hansington. Wash Your Hansington.
And back. You are welcome for that amazing song. Let's move on to stove and oven safety. So the first thing I want to clarify or mention is that this appliance that you see right here on your screen is actually two separate things put together. Some kitchens have them in two spots. Restaurant kitchens often have them in two spots, but in our classroom, they are all in one. The stove is the top part, and that's what we use to do things like fry, saute, boil, simmer. And then the oven is the bottom part, and we use the space inside to do things like bake and broil and roast and braise. Okay, excuse me. So stovetop safety, first thing I want you guys to know is that we need to turn the handles of pots and pans like away from the edge of the stove. You can see in this picture right here, this one's good because the handle is like facing towards the counter. This one's not so good because this handle is pointing out. This is especially important if you are cooking at home and there's little kids around, because little kids want to grab everything. And a big concern is a little kid who doesn't know any better grabbing the end of a pot or the handle of a pot or a pan and pulling it down on themselves and getting super hurt and burned. In our classroom, we want to make sure to avoid this because we don't want students bumping into it and spilling it or getting hurt. So we want to make sure that they're pointed out and away. Also, never leave your food unattended. This is easier in our class because there's usually 3 or 4 students per kitchen, so it's unlikely that everybody would leave at the same time. If we did have something like a fire drill, we would want to turn the stove off and take the food off the heat before we all left. This is something that's more common at home. Like something that I have done before is like turn the stove on to heat something up and then remember that my cell phone is in the other room. And then I go grab my cell phone and then I get distracted and then my food is unattended and then it burns. So we want to avoid that. Next, so these things on the top of the stove are called burners. In our classrooms, they are electric. So they start off like black and cold, and then you turn them on and it takes them a while to get hot. And then they glow red when they're hot. They might be slightly different in your classroom, but they're still electric. At some people's houses, we have gas burners that have like the little fire that comes out. They're all called burners, and usually they have 2 different sizes, a smaller size and a bigger size. When we're choosing them, we want to match the size of the pot or pan we're using to the size of the burner. So big pan, big burner, little pan, little burner. And then lastly, we want to keep flammable items away from the burners, which you're probably thinking, duh, that's obvious. I hope you're thinking that. But sometimes we forget. For example, people will use paper towels to dry their hands. They're in a big hurry and they leave it on the counter, and then it gets like pushed closer to the edge of the stove. We want to avoid that. Another thing that students forget is that these burners stay hot for a while after you turn them off. So they'll stop glowing red, but they'll still be super hot. And students sometimes forget this and put flammable items like our runner trays on top of it and melt, and it like ruins the item, and it also really messes up the burner. So we want to make sure to not put flammable items on top of the burner. So next, moving down to oven safety, and you should be moving to the oven safety section of your notes to fill out. First thing, you want to always check the inside of the oven before turning it on. You want to make sure that there's not like anything left over from the last class. At your home, sometimes people store like extra pots and pans inside of their oven. You want to make sure that it's empty before you turn it on. So you should always just take a quick peek. Next, this isn't really a safety thing, but it's just like a how to use an oven rule. We need to preheat the oven before we start cooking. So you need to preheating means turning the oven on before you're ready to use it, because the ovens take a while to heat up, especially if you have a class earlier in the day, like first period. It takes a while for the oven to heat up. So you want to make sure that it's hot when you need it. There have been so many sad groups who thought they preheated their oven and didn't, or they forgot, and it was time to put their brownies in the oven to bake, and the oven wasn't hot enough, and they weren't able to eat their food that day because they ran out of time. Next, we want to make sure to use oven mitts instead of other things like your apron or your sleeve or a towel to hold hot items. Oven mitts are the safest way to touch items coming out of the oven. You also need to make sure that they're dry. If they are wet, the water can turn into steam and burn us. I've had students who had to go to the nurse or the doctor because they got pretty badly burned from wet oven mitts. This is definitely a test question. So we want to make sure that we're using oven mitts and they are dry. Next, when you are opening the oven door to get things in and out, open it all the way. If you open it part way, you are more likely to burn your arm on the door of the oven because the door of the oven gets really hot too, like the inside of the door. Okay, so you want to make sure to open it all the way. Next, our ovens have windows and they have a little light that you can turn on. And if you want to see the status of the food inside of there, I highly recommend using the light and the window to look and see what's going on. If you keep opening the door to check on your food, a lot of the heat is going to escape and your food is not going to bake in the time that you planned it. It's going to mess up the bake time. So use the light. Use a timer, which is not really a safety thing either, but it is a let's not burn our food thing. We don't want to use our cell phone timers because we have to keep them off, or like our cell phones put away. And your cell phones have more germs on them than toilet seats do, I think. I heard. So anyway, they're full of germs. We want to keep them put away. We're going to use timers on our microwaves or on our ovens. Okay. And then lastly, just as a hot tip at home, especially, you should keep other stuff, empty dishes, out of the oven. You shouldn't store them in there. And we usually don't want to have an empty dish just getting hot in the All right, I'm back. It is a new day for me, but the same day for you. Let's talk about knife safety. Number one, always use a cutting board. Don't use a tray or a plate or the countertop. Cutting board is the best thing to use. Also, in our class, we're going to use a damp rag underneath the cutting board to keep it from slipping or turning around. You just get a towel wet, squeeze out all the excess water and put it underneath just to keep your cutting board more secure. Oh, I also want to remind you that we're still taking notes here. So in this knife safety section. Okay, next, if your knife is going to fall off the counter, if your knife falls off, please do not try to catch it. Just jump out of the way and let it drop. You might feel like jumping out of the way is dramatic, but I don't want a knife to fall on your foot or on your leg. So move out of the way quickly and then pick it up from the ground. Next rule that I feel like surprises some people is that a sharp knife is safer than a dull knife. If your knife is dull, it makes it harder to use correctly and you have to push harder on it. If your knife is nice and sharp, it's going to work how it's supposed to and it'll cut through foods more easily. Okay, next is when sometimes we have to walk through class with knives because you're going to be taking them from the demo table and bringing it back to your kitchen to use. If you're walking with a knife that's not inside of a container, you need to hold it down by your side. You can see it in the picture. I normally have a knife to demo, like if you were walking around the classroom with a knife sticking out and there's people walking around, you can see how somebody could like accidentally bump into it and get hurt. And then lastly, when we're not using knives, they should not be in the sink or like just randomly on the counter. They either need to be in a knife bin or on the cutting board. And when it's time to wash knives, don't put them with all the other dirty dishes. Wash them separately and then wash them with the blade facing away from you. Okay, moving on to fire safety down here. If there's a small fire inside of a pan, you can just use the lid of the pan or a larger lid or a cookie sheet or something to put on top, and the flame should go out. This is a test question. Grease fire. So if something greasy catches on fire, don't use water to put it out. If you splash water on a grease fire, it could spread, like water and oil don't mix. It could spread the fire and make the problem worse. So you can use baking soda or a fire extinguisher. Some of our classrooms also have a fire blanket, but don't use water on that. If your clothes catch on fire, stop, drop, and roll. I feel like we learned that in elementary school, but it's just a good reminder. If your clothes catch on fire, if it's your sleeve and you can put it in the sink, you can rinse it off that way, but you're going to drop to the floor and roll around. I think people sometimes panic and start waving their arms around. That will make the fire worse, okay? If somebody else has their clothes on fire, you could use a fire extinguisher. You could use water, help them out somehow, okay? And then at your home, hopefully you have a fire extinguisher. Go home and ask your family if you have a fire extinguisher or baking soda available. The fire extinguisher at Risdon is located almost like by the front door. There's a box behind where I teach with the fire extinguisher. And if we have a fire and we cannot put it out in like 30 seconds, we're going to definitely use a fire extinguisher because the longer you wait, the bigger the fire gets oftentimes. Okay, moving on to more fun stuff. First aid for minor burns. So this is actually something that happens frequently in our classroom. We get small burns. If you get burned, run it under cold water. It says 10 minutes, but I'm always going to say run it under cold water. Do it. It helps. Okay. When you're done doing that, you're going to cover it with a Band-Aid or something and just let it be. If the blister forms, you're supposed to let them heal and not poke at them or pop them. Next, minor cuts happen sometimes as well. If you get a small cut in our classroom, you're going to wash your hands and then you're going to wash or rinse the cut to prevent infection. After that, you're going to apply pressure to stop the bleeding. Okay, which just means kind of squeeze it. And it's usually your finger in this class. Okay, so you just squeeze it for a minute or two until the bleeding stops and then put a clean Band-Aid on it. I always tell my students, if it is bigger than a one Band-Aid cut, I am always going to send you to the nurse's office because I don't like blood. Okay. All right, moving on. We're at the back of our sheet now. Electrical safety, a couple of quick reminders. If we're using things like blenders or a toaster oven at your house or a mixer, we want to make sure to keep the cords away from heat and water. So we don't want it touching the stove. We don't want it getting wet. Okay. You should also unplug the electrical appliance before you're trying to like mess around with it, poke at it, remove toast from the toaster that's gotten stuck, or cleaning it. Unplug it first, just in case. Okay, y'all, we're so close to being done. Next, broken glass. This is actually something that happens frequently in our classroom as well, just because people are in a hurry and when you're washing glass, it's slippery. If you're at home, do not clean up broken glass barefoot or in socks. Put shoes on first. Don't have bare feet, and also don't use your bare hands on broken glass. In our classroom, you should already be wearing shoes, so that's already taken care of. All right, here are the 3 steps. Step 1, sweep it up immediately so it doesn't get kicked around and so people don't get hurt. In our classroom, the floors are just kind of smooth, so the glass goes everywhere. So we have to sweep like a big area. We're going to sweep it all up and put it into a dustpan. Then we're going to take a damp paper towel, like get a paper towel wet, squeeze it out, and wipe up the little teeny tiny glass crumbs. This is especially important at your house where you might be walking with no shoes or you have pets or little kids. And then last, you're going to put all of the broken glass and the damp paper towel and everything into a trash bag. And it's best to either label it or just take it outside to the outside garbage right away. We do that at school to make sure that our custodians don't get hurt because glass is super sharp. Okay, last, general rules. In general, please don't mess around in the kitchen. I tell my students, we are the only class at our school that uses knives, so we really don't have a lot of chill for messing around. So no messing around. Also, use the right utensil for the job. Okay, don't try to use a knife on a scissor job. I definitely did that a few years ago when I was cutting plastic pieces. I should have been using scissors. I used a knife instead and had to go to urgent care and get stitches. So make sure you're using the correct utensil. If we spill something, please wipe it up right away. The longer it stays on the floor, the more likely people are to slip or to track it all over and make the mess bigger. When we're using cleaners to clean the counters, make sure to keep cleaners away from the food. Don't move food before you spray the counter so the cleaner doesn't spray into the food accidentally. And then lastly, follow directions the first time or sit down for the rest of class. So we will probably give you one reminder hey, please stop doing that, or please go back into your kitchen, or whatever the reminder is. And after that, if you keep doing the same behavior, you'll be asked to be done for the day and you can try again for the next lab. Okay, so here's a part where we're gonna pause. You're going to look at this delightful picture at the bottom of your notes sheet, and you're gonna try to circle at least 8 rules that are broken in this picture. If you're watching this video, pause it now, and then we'll go over it in a minute. All right, let's see how we did. Did you circle this cat on the work surface? We won't have any pets in our kitchen at school, but if you have cats, it would probably be ideal to not have them on your countertops because they walk through their cat litter. Don't let them walk on your cooking surfaces. Oven gloves or oven mitts not being worn. I feel like students get confused. They're like, is that guy wearing gloves or did he just have chubby cartoon hands? Yeah, that's it. So hopefully you circled that. He could have burned himself without oven mitts. This one isn't really a safety, a kitchen safety rule, but cheese in the cupboard, it should have been in the refrigerator. Also, the milk should have been in the refrigerator as well. I hope you guys all noticed this one. The pan handle sticking out, it should be turned towards the countertop so that people don't knock into it accidentally. And then we got this friend with all their jewelry on. You should take off jewelry that can touch food, especially if you're planning on getting your hands into the food. Rubbish bin. I think this was made maybe in England because we call it a garbage can, but it should be cleaned, taken out, emptied. And then this person does not have their hair tied back. In our class, every time we cook, we need to tie our hair back if it's long enough to be in a ponytail. And they're not wearing aprons. I didn't talk about this in the slides, but the cupboard door or the cabinet door should be closed so nobody trips on it. And that's it. Congratulations, you're done. The notes that you just took, you should save as a study guide because you will be taking a test with this info on it later today or tomorrow.